Kingdom Hall.
Hi, I was wondering if someone can help me with a Bible question I had.
Who is this?
Christine.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, I know you guys are all ministers and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I noticed this person, this being in the Old Testament called the Angel of Yahweh.
Yahweh is Jehovah. Jehovah's name.
Exactly. Right. And
Right.
this being is called the messenger. In the Old Testament, angel doesn't really mean created being with wings. Like we picture it means simply messenger. It's used of different kinds of beings. So it's really interesting because this messenger is also called Yahweh, and yet is distinct from Yahweh and appears, So one question I have is in Genesis 16, where Hagar is kind of interacting with this being. And maybe you could look at it.
Do you study with anyone of the witnesses?
Oh, I did in the past. Yeah, I know they like talking about the Bible, so I just thought I'd ask you because I was noticing this being is repetitively repeated in the Old Testament, the messenger of Yahweh.
It sounds to me the messenger of Yahweh would be an angel.
Yeah, that's the reason I was wondering about it, because it doesn't seem like the way an angel would talk, because like here in the instance with Hagar, the messenger says to her, I will multiply your descendants exceedingly. Not that Yahweh will. And then in verse 13 it says, she called the name of Yahweh who spoke to her, you are the God who sees. It's not how they usually talk. They usually say Jehovah or Yahweh said this and that,
Yeah.
And then what's really...
I mean, messengers, they're just the conduit, basically. They're not, they're powerful and everything else, but they're agents of Jehovah.
Well, here's another one, because I was noticing the same expression is used in Exodus 3, the messenger of Yahweh, in the burning bush. And then the messenger of Yahweh says in verse 6, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob.
Why don't I just take your number? Why don't you? Would you like to have a lady stop by or something like that?
Oh, I don't really live around there. And then one more thing. This is the most wild.
Where do you live?
I live in the Southwest. I don't live around there. I was just trying to get a Jehovah's Witness to ask about it. And then this is the most wild one, is in Exodus 23, where God promises to send his messenger ahead of the children of Israel, when the Exodus. And get this, what he said about him. He says, be attentive to him and listen to his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. That doesn't sound like just a created being angel,
Well, it's really good.
Because you know how sacred God's name is.
About,
yeah. Isn't that, have you ever heard that verse before, that Yahweh's name is in this messenger of Yahweh? You know how sacred it is saying his name.
Right.
Yeah.
So
he wouldn't say his name was in just anybody. Certainly not any human or created, cherub kind of angel with wings.
Some of these things, before I could say anything, I'd have to do research on it.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can check into it. I thought you guys might know. I know you study all of the Bible, and if you trace that, now in the New World Translation, every other Bible calls it the Angel of Yahweh or messenger, but they call it simply Jehovah's Angel. So to me, that seems a little different. But check out the one in Exodus 23 where it says, my name is in him. Jehovah is saying, my name is in him. And it kind of reminds me of the verse where it says in Colossians that all the fullness of the Godhead dwells in Jesus in bodily form. He's like the visible Yahweh. Traditional theologians would consider him the visible Yahweh that appeared in the Old Testament and led them out of Egypt and wrestled with Jacob and appeared to Abraham and walked in the garden, because we know that the Father doesn't have, feet to walk or, a body.
True.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
Why don't you just give me your number and I'll have somebody who's more, I'm not really a super Bible expert myself, but there's a lot of guys in the congregation, or women for that matter, that could really converse well with you.
Okay. Maybe I'll just try back later or something. I don't want to, or I can ask somebody here. I can ask a witness at the carts. But I just wanted to know what I thought you guys were like. Pastors, or you're called ministers and things like that?
Well, we are, but a lot of times before we say anything, we have to research that and give you an accurate answer.
Yeah,
We just can't. I can't speculate. I don't like to.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
Okay. Well, it's the visible Yahweh of the Old Testament is really what it's generally in traditional theology is considered, and it's really interesting because the New Testament says Christ is the image of the invisible God. Image just meaning exact representation. It's not meaning just I'm kind of like him because I hung out with him for thousands of years. It means a lot more than that. But anyways, I thought it was interesting. I just wanted to see if you guys had a thought on it.
It's real interesting. It's really refreshing to see someone who was really interested in the Bible too. That's a great thing.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Why don't you give me your number and I'll have.
Well, I work and drive a lot, so I'm hard to get hold of on the phone.
Do you live in Manitowoc County?
No, I don't live around there. But like I said, I could just ask one of the witnesses in my town. Sometimes they're hanging out with their magazines and stuff. Some of them like to talk. Some of them don't really like to talk.
Otherwise, go to a quick trip.
To a what?
That's where I'm headed. That's where I'm headed right now.
Oh, is that where they hang out?
Usually in the morning. That's where they stop and get coffee.
Oh,
and
okay.
you can spot us because we're all dressed with suits and ties and.
Yeah. Well, I like Quick Trip so much, but Quick Trip is a cool place. But yeah, okay. Well, hey, God bless and thanks. Thanks for talking.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Noticing a huge change in one verse. I was wondering. It seems so interesting. It was because when I looked at the New World Translation on the website jw.org, it's from Hebrews 1:6 when it talks about
Hebrews 1:6.
Yeah.
I can take a look at that. Do you mind my asking who this is?
Christine,
okay. Are you from the area?
No, I just wanted to talk to a Jehovah's Witness.
Okay.
I haven't had any come in so long. I don't know if they still come around or what.
Yeah. Do you live here in the Prairie du Chien area? Or?
No, I live somewhere else. But yeah, they've been around for a couple of years, actually, in our neighborhood anyway.
Okay. Hebrews 1:6. You said that was the big change?
Yeah. What do you have?
In the revised edition or in the original New World Translation?
Well, I'm sure you have the latest one, right? Is that what you're reading from?
I have both.
Oh, I see. Okay. So you can see the difference?
Well, I can read them. I can read the difference here in just a second.
Well, I mean, not from the last New World Translation, but it's a 1961.
Okay. So what difference did you notice?
Well, in the 1961, it says, but when he again brings the firstborn into the world, he says, let all the angels of God worship him, like all other Bibles.
Yes.
I was just wondering why they changed the words. The word worship.
Into obeisance? Well, what does obeisance mean?
It's a lot less than worship. It's not spiritual worship like worship God. it kind of seems like and that's what a lot of people say about it, that's very sectarian and has people list just pages of changes from kind of other standard versions, that it's changed in verses to kind of promote the doctrines that they already have, you know.
So you're saying that you feel like the original promoted worshiping Jesus? Yeah,
like they did in the past. They taught to worship Jesus. Yeah, they did for a long time. I think till around the 1950s, they taught to worship Jesus. The organization.
Throughout the gospel accounts, when Jesus said to worship the only true God,
mm-hmm.
why would he have said worship the only true God if he was the one that should have been worshipped?
He said worship the Father. And yes, he did call him the only true God, that for eternal life you must know the only true God is what he called the Father and Jesus Christ whom he has sent. But, you know, there's other ways of looking at that he was sent from sharing his glory with the Father in heaven, which he did talk about. He said that he was in the bosom of the Father and he was with God and was God. So it's a little, you know, only true God usually distinguishes the Father from false gods. Jesus is also called only true God in 1 John chapter 5. But
and at the end of John, the Apostle John writes that he wrote everything down so that everyone would know that Jesus was the Son of God. Not that he was God, but that he was the Son of God. Right.
But when the Jews almost stoned him for blasphemy for saying that God was his own Father, and all he had said was that he is the Son of God. So, you know, you have to think, what does that mean? Does he just mean a creation of God like everybody, or did that mean something else? But do you know of a place where I know that also Jehovah's Witnesses say they admit their mistakes and correct them. Do you know where they wrote about retracting the worship of Jesus, which they taught until around the 1950s?
You know, I'm not very familiar with the worship of Jesus being a teaching. But the one thing that I wholeheartedly defend the New World Translation as a translation, and I'll tell you one reason as to why. Because in many translations, people who believe in the Trinity, which it sounds like you're one who believes in the Trinity, take John 1:1 and they really make that seem as though there is saying that Jesus is God.
Well,
so when you look at the original language, there are two different words for God used there. So any accurate translation would have to differentiate that there are two different words used there, and most Bible translations don't differentiate that. They want it to seem like that promotes the Trinity, when in actuality it doesn't even a little.
Well, what's really interesting is that I've read the earliest writings that existed in the church, some even beginning from before AD 100, and when they quote that verse and use it, it's the standard way. It's always been used. So I guess, you know, the New World Translation translators in quotes, they weren't proficient in Greek or Hebrew. So you can go on about Greek, but they were unqualified. So it's considered a very sectarian, even in John 1:1. And I don't pretend to know Greek, so I'm not going to discuss the words and the grammar. But I know for a fact that they did not. They were not proficient. So that's a problem. I don't know why their view would have any weight at all. And it seems like they were just changing it for their views. And it's interesting that they came out with that Bible around the same time they were changing the worship of Jesus, you know?
I would be more than happy to take down your name and address and forward it on to someone who would like to spend some time discussing this with you.
Yeah.
But I don't really want to do this on the phone.
Oh, no problem. No problem.
Do this in person. So if you would like to give me your...
Well, that's okay. I can see some witnesses, like at the carts. Maybe I can ask them about it. They don't come over anymore. They don't come by in our neighborhood for a couple of years now. But yeah, and jwfacts.com, it has a really good section about worship of Jesus and how that was changed. So I was just wondering where they admitted that, because that would be a pretty huge change.
And you would think, and maybe you do this, but you would think someone who holds Jesus in such high esteem would want to imitate him. Do you go door to door talking to people like Jesus commanded his followers to? You would, right? I mean, that you would want to imitate someone who you hold in such high esteem, right?
That phrase would be really and literally according to Holmes. And if you want to translate that as door to door, random doors to random doors, Jesus also said in Luke, don't be transferring from door to door. And it says in Acts that they took the Lord's Supper, the Lord's evening meal, from house to house. Now, they weren't taking it from random home, going to random places, that they met in homes, and that's just simply what that means. And there's no record of Jesus doing that either.
At the end of Matthew, he told his followers, go out and make disciples. Don't wait for people to come to you to make disciples.
Oh, yeah.
So go out.
I do. Yeah, so many Christians do. Both of my daughters have been in China on missions, the China Inland Mission. I mean, the great missionary movements of the 1800s were all Protestants that actually opened those countries where you can go now. They are the heroes that went like to the Hindus, to Muslims, to Africa, and had almost no converts, but they began to open those fields. I don't think the Watchtower really writes much about that. But hey, check out the Worship of Jesus. It talks about it in jwfacts.com. And thanks for talking.
I'll be honest with you, I probably will not. But
I know they restrict your information, which is really a red flag. That's a very serious red flag. I'm not restricted in any way. I can read your website. I read the Watchtower. Truth can really stand up to scrutiny, can't it? Maybe. Does your truth stand up to it? Why are they so afraid of that? But anyways, hey.
You have a good day.
You too. God bless.
I'll just say it was pleasant talking to you. Have a good day.
Okay, thanks.